Welcome back to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here Mondays and Fridays working at simplifying things in our lives one step at a time, one day at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and it is good to be back. We've taken a break. I don't even know. Was it 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Um, but it's exciting to be back and to look at my schedule of all the fun things planned. I posted over on Instagram yesterday. I was at a coffee shop with my daughter working away and so excited about the podcast guests that I was sitting there lining up. And I was thinking then, and I was also thinking this morning as I sat down to record, how blessed I am and how thankful I am that this gets to be a job for me because it doesn't feel like a job. It's such a blessing. And I love doing this. I love the people I get to talk with. And I love the things I get to share with you guys here. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here because this would not even exist if it wasn't for you guys. So thank you. Before we dive in, well, first, let me tell you what we're talking about today. Super excited to have an author on with me who is, first of all, just a fun lady to chat with. I seriously want to sit down with her on her farm or mine and have a cup of kombucha and laugh away some hours. It was that much fun talking with her. Um, but she also is a lavender farmer. So we were talking all about lavender today, and I think you're going to be blown away. I learned so much. Um, there are so many varieties of lavender. I think she said 46 varieties, and they have such slightly different tints to them in all different ways and different ways to use them. And the medicinal properties of lavender, it's mind boggling. I mean, God just created such amazingness in his creation, and it's there for us to enjoy and to use. And lavender is absolutely a wonderful example of that. Um, we talked about all the different ways to use lavender. A lot of them I was surprised about, and I didn't know how to make these things that we're talking about. So there's just so much. You're going to love it, whether you have just one little lavender plant or maybe you don't have any at all. You can just go out and buy some dried lavender. The things that you will want to do with it after you listen to this episode, well, you're just going to be a Martha Stewart of lavender. There's just no way around it. Okay, before I bring on Terry Vesey, the author of The Lavender Companion, I want to tell you a couple things. First of all, it was super fun. I was highlighted in national news a few weeks ago. If you didn't catch that and you'd like to know more about it, go to my website, soullyrested.com. Right on the homepage, you can click through, read the article, and see about that. That was super fun. Oh, I really want to make sure that you know about a pantry challenge going on right now. Ruth Ann Zimmerman and myself are doing a weekly challenge, and we are sharing a recipe every week of a homemade pantry staple that you can make at home instead of relying on the broken food system and buying these staples. You can be independent when it comes to these things and literally make them yourself. They will also taste better and be so much better for you. So if you haven't joined in on this, if you haven't heard of it yet, please, please, it is not too late to join in. If you are catching this episode right when it comes out, you have a whole nother week to be a part of this. So go to soullyrested.com/challenge. All the information is there about how to join in. And there's lots of great prizes we're giving away, including a Bosch mixer and a dehydrator. So go to soullyrested.com/challenge and join us. Also, guys, we're giving away books. The book from today, this amazing, beautiful Lavender Companion. And we are still giving away Love Language of the South. Stacey Lynn Harris was on episode 101. And that was a great episode. If you didn't catch it, go back and listen just about the family table, how important it is, and the very simple things that we can do to make food truly edifying to those that we love. So we're giving away copies of both of those gorgeous books, as well as I still have a copy of The Kindness of God. Nate Pickowitz was on episode 100. So I have a copy of all of those books. 3 winners, 3 different people will each get one of those books. All you have to do is go leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. So you can just go to Apple Podcasts, or if you're not sure how to do it or how to maneuver around, it can be a little tricky if you haven't left a review before. Go to solelyrested.com/podcast. And there, it's super easy. It will literally take you a minute. You can go leave a review of this podcast, and you will automatically be entered to win a copy of one of these amazing books. And I will announce the winners in a week or two right here on a future episode of the podcast. And I think the only other thing I wanted to tell you is I'm actually really excited about one other thing. A week from today, when this airs, so on May 6th, is a very special anniversary for our family. It marks exactly 10 years since we moved onto our little family farm here in New England. And I'm a mixture of, I can't believe it's been 10 years, to just overwhelmed with all that has happened in the 10 years and what we have been blessed with and able to bless others with. So, next episode on May 6th is going to be about that. It's going to be a very special 10-year anniversary that I think will bless you. And I hope you'll find really special. So, please join me for that next Monday. This Friday, so what will the date be? Oh, I should have a calendar in front of me. Well, the next Friday episode is going to be a really quick little Q&A. I am bringing Terry Vasey back on because we ran out of time in the episode I'm sharing with you today. And excuse me, I had questions from you guys over on Instagram that I asked yesterday. Hey, do you guys have any questions for a lilac? Not lilac, lavender. I have lilac on the brain. A lavender farmer. And you guys sent over some great questions. I pulled out some of the best, and we did a quick 5-minute Q&A that we're going to be putting out on Friday. So, whew, that's everything I had to tell you. Let's dive into this great talk with Terry Vesey. Well, Terry, I am so glad to have you here today. I mean, when I got a copy of your book, I was blown away. Like, I knew I wanted to have you on because I think lavender is just a fascinating topic, and I really want to know more about it myself. I don't grow any here, but I need to. I'm sure when I'm done talking with you, I'm going to have to go out and get some plants.
That's
But then when
awesome.
I held your book in my hand, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like a coffee table, center of the room, gorgeous, gorgeous piece of art, along with being, very informative." So I love what you've done here, and I'm so glad you're here to talk about it. Welcome.
And I am so thankful to be on your show today, Michelle. You are just amazing, awesome, and I know now why you have a zillion followers and listeners.
Well, none of that's actually true, but we can just keep up with the facade. I don't know. But thank you. um, so I was actually shocked, Terry. Like, I thought I was just going to bring on a lavender farmer and I was going to learn about lavender. But then I read the introduction to your book, which I don't always do that, but I was just drawn in and wanted to know more about you. And I was shocked at some of the things we have in common, like not typical things that people have in common. I mean, okay, first of all, we moved here. My family moved to our farm 10 years ago next week. And it's about the same timing for you. You've been maybe in the 9-year mark.
Yes, that's about exactly right.
Okay. So that alone, I'm like, oh, wow. Like 10 years ago, you and I were like having
Doing the
these
same
crazy cool
thing.
things happen in our lives. Yeah. And then the fact that you moved to this old farm, and I am envious that you know the history of your farm in the depth that you do. Here on our farm in New England, we can only go back to about, I think it was 1904, as far as any records of who owned the farm. The house was built in 1800. So the first 100 years, I have no idea, who lived here. Um, but you, how cool. Like, okay, let me just start again because everybody listening has not read your introduction, of course. So let me just stop talking and ask you, tell me some of your story and what brought you to where you are today as a lavender farm owner.
Well, I've always wanted to have a farm. Ever since I was a little girl, I grew up, in mostly rural settings, but there was something I just wanted to have a little farm someday. And
Mhm.
I kind of went off in life and became a political campaign lawyer, maybe the antithesis of being a farmer. But anyway,
Yes, I
after
was
I
shocked.
retired,
when I asked you for a little bio and you sent me kind of your resume, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't sound like a lavender farmer.
Yes, I know I did take kind of a circuitous route to get here. But, my husband Rick and I wanted to have we were living in Southern California, and I had lived for a good part of my life in Sedona, Arizona, and I just love, love, love Arizona. And
Mm,
so we wanted to have an escape, and I said, "You know, there's this little mountain community just east a little bit of Sedona called Pine, and it's just a 2,000 person, just really tiny community." So we came up here and bought a little place a couple of blocks away from where the farm is. And we drive by this old broken down farm. It had been abandoned for 47 years.
mm,
And it wasn't because nobody wanted it, but it was because it was a Mormon family that settled it. And over the years, there were, about a zillion descendants, and all of the descendants kind of wanted it, but for various reasons. Most of them to, tear down Granny and Granddaddy's old junky place and, build some kind of new development here. And so
mm.
it had really been held up by the administrator of the estate. And finally, I guess after that long, he decided, well, there's so many kids that want the farm. I think we'll just put it up on the market and whoever buys it,
Wow.
buys it.
Mm.
Well, as luck would have it, one of my friends was one of those descendants and a realtor here in town and said, the estate is getting ready. I know, Terry, you've been wanting that farm and talking about it endlessly. And so, what I just want to let you know is it's becoming available. So we thought, you know what? Let's just make an offer right now. So we made an
Wow.
offer. They countered it. We met in the middle and we were all done before it ever really hit the public market.
Wow.
And it's so rewarding because so many descendants of the Hunt family, the original Hunt family, come and drop by the farm all the time from all over Arizona and Utah. And they're just the universal comment is, "Thank you so much, Rick and Terry,
Mm.
for saving this farm. Granny and Granddaddy would be so happy to know that it stayed a farm." And that just warms our heart because
I
we
love
were
it.
able to work through a lot of the history, and the farm is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. In fact, it's the only privately held farmstead in the state of Arizona listed on the National Register. So we hope
So
that means it's
cool.
going to be preserved long, long into the future.
Very cool. Well, I've only been to Arizona once myself. I know my son and daughter-in-law, they lived there for a while and loved it. So I'll probably get back someday and I'm going to have to come visit your farm because
Oh,
it is
please.
just
You
beautiful.
Oh, please, oh, please. We are, we're always, always open to having guests come and visit, and the farm store is open Fridays,
Yes.
Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays all through our season. And
I
so
love it.
we would just love to have you. We're,
I love it.
in fact, just for
And I
you,
love what
I'm
you've done. I'm sorry.
I'm thinking perhaps lavender margaritas on the back deck.
That sounds wonderful. I'll bring some maple syrup if we want it. um, you mentioned in the book about the old house, and that also got my attention because I thought, how many people do I know? Let me think. Zero who live in an old farmhouse with hand hewn beams in the ceiling. Like I'm the only one I know. And now I know you, Terry, because you also live in this old farmhouse that you've restored. And I'm sure the family is elated. I think it's so great that you've respected the history like that. And like I said, we both fell into this whole idea. I too have a background of farming and I always thought it'd be fun someday, but never really thought I would do it. And then literally our family fell into this, which I think for my listeners, I'll just tell you, I think maybe next week I will finally share. I've never really shared the whole long story. I always just say that it just happened. We really weren't expecting to homestead. So next week, guys, tune in. I'm going to give you the details of our whole story because I haven't really documented that anywhere. Um, so anyway, Terry, now that we've gotten through the list of all the things we have in common, help me with all the things I don't know. There's so many things I don't know about lavender. So okay, You planted lavender. I thought this was cool because you had the wild um elk, right?
Yes, so we have in our town, I think colloquially we've heard, the largest town herd of elk in the United States.
Hmm.
Last night in our lower field, I counted 56 elk. And we have a big, large stock pond and, of course, green pastures. And we're kind of at high altitude. We're at about 5,700 feet in Arizona. So it's very temperate. We're surrounded by national forest. It's not what most people typically think of as Arizona.
Mm,
And in this mountain valley, the elk have just found that they just love to come down out of the hills in the forest and they maraud around town, especially
mm.
all summer long, pretty much year
Wow.
round, but really in big, big, big numbers all summer. And so, mentioning back to the history of the property, when our chief focus initially was buying this property and restoring it and getting it on the National Register or some kind of historic preservation. But as you know, another thing we're gonna have in common, we were bleeding money doing all of
Oh,
the costs to restore, right?
it's awful. It's so bad. And when you go to do something, there's 10 other things you realize as you take down a wall or, move a door, and you realize there's so much more than you even expected and how expensive it is. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and it came to a point where we said, "You know what? We either need to kind of take another different route here, or we need to, come up with a way to inject some more capital into this project."
Yeah.
And so I said one day, "You know, honey, we've got land and we've got water. We should grow something." And Rick's
Uh-huh.
first immediately response was, "Well, what are we going to do about all the elk? Because
Yeah.
elk, I don't know if you have elk around where you are, but they're like the size of a horse. It's not like deer.
Yeah,
And
we actually
they're,
have what I started to say when I had to catch myself when I said you have wild blank, is I started to say moose because that's what we have here,
oh,
and
right.
they live in the swamp area that borders our property, and yeah, they will eat anything in their path, and they're huge.
And they're huge.
Yeah.
And elk can walk up to a 7-foot fence. I've seen
Yes.
this 100 times if I've seen it once, and just leap over it. I've never
Mm,
seen anything with the athleticism of these elk. So you really need 7.5 to 8-foot fences to
yeah.
be sure and keep elk out, which I have around my vegetable garden.
Mhm.
But when he said that, I said, "Okay, well, just a minute." And I ran into the house. I flipped open the computer and I Googled, "What won't elk eat?" And it came back with all kinds of things that you wouldn't want anyway, right?
Right.
But one of them was lavender.
Mhm.
And we honestly did not know very much about lavender. I think Rick bought me a little bottle of lavender essential oil when we were dating. And that was
Mhm.
about our communal experience with lavender. But YouTube being what it is, and wonderful people like you with podcasts and having the availability of information,
Yeah.
we kind of went through it, found another lavender farm or grower here in Arizona, Red Rock Lavender in Concho, and they were founders, uh, Christine and Mike Teeples of the U.S. Lavender Growers Association. So we thought, wow, how lucky is that? So we went out, visited their farm. Mike came and looked at ours and said, "This is perfect." And calculated the lavender plants, and we bought like 5,800 plants, I think,
Yeah.
to begin with, and got them home and then said, "Oh my, now we have to plant all of these." But anyway, we had so many friends and neighbors, and people just came, people I'd never seen before, I've never seen since, came
Yeah.
out with shovels and said, "Wow, we're so excited in this little community. You're bringing a lavender
So
farm."
fun.
And they helped us plant. And in fact, a lot of
So
those
fun.
people come back every year. We have a lavender annual lavender harvest. And we throw a big barbecue and we brew a keg of lavender beer and we just turn it into a big party. And so it's become
Awesome.
a real community event and it's just so fun to knit
So
community
fun.
together
There's
like that.
nothing like rural America. Unlike you, Terry, I did not live in rural America until 10 years ago when we moved here.
Oh,
And there's
wow.
nothing like it. That's something else we have in common. Our town is about 3,300. So we are whopping large compared to your 2,500. But tiny little town. And we actually have a winery in town that it's a very similar thing to your lavender farm, that the whole
Mhm.
community will just show up and help when it's time to prune. And then they have a big breakfast. So it's rural America. There is nothing better, I think, really. So, okay. Let's get into some of the nitty gritty. Like, okay, you have three different varieties of lavender that you grow. Tell me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Two are culinary, and one is, I don't know what you call the other option. You use it like for, um, what's the word I want to say? Body products,
Yeah,
soaps,
no,
and
that's perfectly said. So we grow grosso lavender, which is probably one of the world's most grown varieties, and it's a great essential oil variety. And
okay.
essential oil varieties are important, I think, to growers for several reasons. One is with Grosso is very, very beautiful. And so it's in our top field near our farm store so that people
Mm,
can lean over the fence and ooh and ah, gorgeous fragrance, big,
mm,
tall plant. You know, when it's in full bloom, 3.5 feet tall with just
wow.
waves of purple. When the
Wow.
breezes blow here, it's almost something you only have to experience in order to understand. But picture standing by a lavender field of 3.5 foot tall with wind breezes blowing and waves of lavender and the
Mm,
aroma coming off all of that lavender.
wow.
It's just enveloping. It's heaven. It really is
Wow.
heaven. And so that's our Grosso, and we use it exactly what you said for bath and body products primarily. We use every part of it. We distill it. The parts that we don't distill, we really love the stems. We cut a lot of it for dried bundles because those beautiful, really long stems and the kind of almost navy blue purple color, they dry to a gorgeous, gorgeous color. And so
Mm,
we sell an awful lot wedding bouquets,
mm,
flowers that are used for just every possible imagination,
mm.
floral bouquets. And then our next plant
Well, before you
in
go
our
on, maybe
mid
you explained and I didn't quite catch it. You said you use every part of it. What do you do if you take the blooms off and you're just left with the stems and the leaves? What do you use those for?
Okay, so the cut flowers, which we hang upside down as a bundle, and then when we distill, we pretty much put the entire plant, or the cutting, let's say, into the still. So the
Mm.
stems and the flowers and the leaves all go into the still for essential oil. And
Huh,
then
okay.
the other thing we do with it is after it's dry, we debundle it. And debundling is a process, and I think there's a picture in the book of it. You take the lavender and kind of, if you're doing it by yourself, you just hold it upside down, the dried bundle over some kind of a container and rub the bundles between your hands, and the lavender buds just rain down. And those buds are fabulous for your listeners. I just think nothing is better than Grosso lavender or a similar variety for making your own home sachets. And we
Mm,
do hanging sachets, just little sachets to tuck in your lingerie drawer or in your shoes or put in your clothes closets, and they're just wonderful. And it's also the variety of lavender that we use because of its high linalool contents and also really high fragrance because of the oil again in our eye pillows, our neck therapy pillows, anything that you want where you're going to have something um, put in like fabric or some kind of a project where you want that lavender to last a really long time, have a high oil content so you can kind of squish it and
mm,
that wonderful fragrance comes back for years. I think maybe even decades.
Really? Wow. I have to pause this episode for just a minute to let you know about our sponsor. I am in love with this company. I've been using them for years for teas, and now I go to them all the time for botanicals. Positively botanicals.com. A botanical is a plant or a plant part that's valued for its medicinal or therapeutic properties. There are many things that you can do with them, like people will make tinctures and infusions and extracts, and I do a little bit of that. But what I really love the most for using my botanicals is to make teas, to make medicinal, delicious teas, and I drink them iced or warm. If you want to go to soulyrested.com/botanicals, there I give you a savings code for Positively Botanicals, and I link to all my absolute favorite things that I get from them. And this is the best part, I link to all my different recipes of my absolute favorite teas, and some of them have proven to be favorites of you guys as well. I hear from folks often about how these have become their new favorite drinks. So go to soulyrested.com/botanicals to find out more, and absolutely be sure to go check out our sponsor, positivelybotanicals.com. That's awesome. And then the medicinal properties involved with all of these things that you just said, right? I mean, I know that it helps you sleep. I was shocked that I read, I think in your book is where I read it last night, that it actually helps with memory retention even. And there were lots of other things. Like what are all the benefits of just smelling the aroma of lavender?
You know, I think one of the most fascinating and interesting areas of research about lavender right now is from the neurobiological institutes, and several studies, I mean, not several, hundreds of studies are being
Mhm.
done around the world. And um, let's see, the Institute of Neurobiology, there's the I can't recall, but in Thailand, for some reason, Thailand is a big center of
Hmm.
neurobiological research, also for lavender, Japanese Neuroscience Institute, and of course, many in the United States that are really focusing on what is it about lavender and the brain. And some of these studies are so fascinating because they're very, very technologically um, I would have to say, using a lot of equipment that is way beyond what, say, the holistic community references about the history of lavender, and that, you know, throughout the ages, if you smell it, it calms the brain and it helps you sleep, and all of this
Right.
information colloquially we've known about lavender. But what's most fascinating to me is the references that you just made, and that is serious scientific study by brain institutes or brain scientists that are looking at, does lavender really do what all of this claims have been made throughout centuries? And
Yeah.
if so, why and how? And what they're finding, and again, I'm not a scientist, but I am a junkie for reading these to the best of my ability to understand them all. And lavender does two things. One is by breathing it in, it takes about 4 seconds for it to really affect the brain, and part of it is it kind of atomizes, right? If you can smell a scent, that scent is actually going into your body and being picked up by the brain. And lavender has an immediate impact on the brain, and it's both the linalool and also the linolenic acetates that are they're finding are just incredible compounds. Lavender has over 200 compounds, but
Hmm.
these two particular are being isolated and worked with. And the other thing is, which I just find mind blowing, is that if you use lavender essential oil topically, and this is where it's so important for your listeners to understand how important it is to have high quality lavender
Mm.
essential oil if you're going to use it therapeutically. And high quality usually means either organically grown or certified naturally grown, which we are. And also, lavender grown above 5,000 feet tends to concentrate these compounds in a way that, you know, these mass produced fields of lavender in, shall I just say, other countries
Mhm. Yep.
where lavender in China, there's just bazillions of acres now that are being converted to lavender. And
Mm.
there's a lot of chatter within the lavender community that it's not very high quality lavender.
Mm.
But anyway, back to lavender grown
Now,
above
is that, I
5,000.
assume, 2 reasons? That the varieties that they're growing as well as the altitude, they're nowhere near your 5,000 plus altitude.
Yeah, and also the growing methodologies,
Okay,
and varieties are super important, but growing methodologies are super important too.
okay.
And and the soil and the water, the
Mm,
things that you don't necessarily think of immediately as
right.
affecting the quality of the output, but um, in
That
France,
makes
you
sense.
look at
So
those
they're stripping their
amazing
soils
areas,
probably, as long as they're getting the plant that they wanna get that they can sell, they really don't care about the quality of it, and they don't really care about the quality of their soil, and anybody who's a gardener knows the soil quality is so important to the plant.
Exactly, and the
Yeah.
water, and the water
Yeah.
is real important to lavender. Lavender likes very alkaline conditions. But
So how
anyway,
do the listeners who are concerned about this know that they're getting the high quality? I mean, like, is just looking for organic even isn't necessarily gonna be enough, is it?
you know, that is something that is being researched a lot right now too, because you're exactly right. Organic definitely points in the right direction. Certified naturally grown absolutely points in the right direction. You want to make sure that that soil has not been just imbued with all kinds of, biophosphates and things like that,
Yeah.
and, you know, fertilizers, and especially, I think one of the most damaging is especially things that suppress weeds. So we have all of those Roundup kind of
Yeah.
variety of chemicals, and a lot of that pre-emergent is chemicals and stuff are sprayed on fields prior to growth. And of course, all of that is being uptaken in the roots and, distributed into the plant over time. So
Yeah.
I do think that organic and certified naturally grown is extremely important. But then I also think, much like wine grapes, lavender is very sensitive to, let's call it, the appellations of where it's, grown. And interesting, Bulgaria grows fabulous, and Bulgaria and France really trade back and forth with lavender production, worldwide lavender production, particularly lavender essential oil. So I think that those things are important. And for your listeners, you know, um, if you can't find your way to Pine Creek Lavender Farm, we do have a web store online, but bulk apothecary for people who are not wholesale buyers, they have a lot of, Bulgarian oils and, higher quality oils. And I think that's a good resource for the person that's wanting to do DIY crafting and things like that and wants to just find something that's easy to source.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Okay, so I actually interrupted you with all of that because you were going to tell us your other 2 varieties of lavender that you grow.
Yeah, so we also grow Provence,
Mhm.
obviously Provence, France, and Provence is a wonderful culinary lavender, but uh, it's a very forward flavor lavender. So I find that it really holds up well in infusions, infusing honey. We use it in our lavender, a lot of our urban spice blends. We use Provence lavender, and it's great. We make a lavender lemon pepper grinder, and it's so rich in flavor, very robust, that it holds up well against things like pepper and lemon. And I like to, most of our products that we use and sell in the store, for culinary purposes, I like to use the fresh whole lavender buds and put them in grinders, for our customers, so that as you're cooking, like for example, our lavender lemon pepper blend, which we literally sell all over the world now, you're grinding that fresh pepper, fresh, all of the fresh lavender that's in there. Well, it's dried, but you're grinding it fresh into your
Right.
foods. And ingesting lavender, by the way, speaking back to the medicinal
Yeah.
properties, is
Yeah.
showing to be amazingly helpful, taken internally as well. Very, very
Mm.
good for digestion. In fact, that's one of the chief benefits of lavender when you look at it's calming, it's soothing, it helps you sleep, it helps calm the brain, lowers blood pressure, but also is amazingly good for indigestion and
Hmm.
for helping the system regulate in the gut, in the colon. And it's
I was,
probably because it's an antibacterial, antiviral, and
huh.
antimicrobial. So it's very, very good for digestion.
Wow. I was going to
University
ask you as you started talking about the medicinal when you're eating it, like I was just curious and you've already answered it. Like maybe it helps with gut health because I am so big about talking about healthy guts because kombucha like changed my life when I started making kombucha and it started healing my gut. And one of my favorite, actually, I don't grow lavender. I have a lot of lilacs here, like hundreds of year old lilac bushes on our farm.
Ooh,
And I will make lilac syrup and lilac sugar. So now I'm going to have to research about if there's been shown to be any medicinal properties in lilac too, because my favorite kombucha in the world is lilac blueberry kombucha that I make. So that's
ooh.
just an extra side note there.
Well, we're gonna have to trade addresses because I'd like to
Yeah.
send you some of my lavender products, and I'd
I
love
would
some of
love
your
that.
lilac products.
I
That
would
would be
love
very
that.
fun.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Well, I would love to send you and for for your listeners too. Lavender, we make a lot of lavender tea here. And again, making
Mm,
sure that you're getting culinary varieties and that they're really high quality. But lavender teas are just the most amazing way to bring those healing properties into
wow.
your system in a super delicious and easy way.
Wow.
And we do mint that we grow here on the farm. We do chamomile, we do hibiscus, and we do Earl Grey teas.
Okay.
And I think that there is just nothing better. And they're so easy to make sun teas out of, a lavender infused tea. And it's just
Yeah.
makes the best iced tea in the whole
Yeah,
world.
your book goes into that. It sounds delicious. And anybody who watches on YouTube knows that you're not going to ever see me recording a podcast without some tea in my hand because I'm addicted to tea. Tea is my love language. So everything you just mentioned made me swoon over here. I love it. Please do. I would love to have some samples. And I know you mentioned very briefly, and I'm going to hopefully remember to do it again at the end, but go ahead and tell us where they can find all of these amazing things that you're talking about. What is your website again?
It's at pinelavenderfarm.com.
Pinelavenderfarm.com. Okay. So you've told us about Provence. What's the other culinary lavender that you grow, and how do you decide which one you're using for which purpose?
Oh, that's such a great question. So now we're to my very favorite lavender on earth.
You held the
and
best for last. I love it.
and
The
it's
suspense
our
is building.
little
What is it?
it's an English variety and it's called Royal Velvet. And
Oh,
Royal Velvet, and as are all English varieties, angustifolios, and that's the only true lavenders are the
hmm,
angustifolios. And I just love Royal Velvet. Royal Velvet is considered by connoisseurs to be a confectionery lavender. And it's a sweeter, milder. It's in fact the cover of the book
okay.
has a picture of my royal velvet, that beautiful, deep blue, purple, almost like a velvety looking. You can see why it's called royal velvet.
It
And
is gorgeous.
royal velvet is what we use in anything that we're looking for that confectionery direction. So when we make lavender sugar, my lavender cocos, lavender teas, almost all of my lavender teas, I use royal velvet because I want to bring that little extra sweetness into the base flavor of the tea. I use
Okay.
royal velvet in pretty much anything that I'm doing in my own kitchen when I am baking something or creating a new flavor, let's say lavender scones or lavender lemon cakes and things like that. It really hits that profile just perfect of this
Mm,
beautiful, bright, aromatic aroma, beautiful
mm.
colors, and it's different from Provence because it's not so camphor forward. or Provence, you'll really find those terpenes and the camphor, which is
Okay.
great in meat rubs and things where you want bold flavors. In Royal Velvet, it kind of hangs back a little bit and really hits your olfactory senses and is just a great little lavender. And we do
Wow.
sell both varieties in our farm store at that pinelavenderfarm.com. You can buy either of those two varieties that we send out.
I love it. Well, I have an area I was thinking about just yesterday that I think I really could plant a nice lavender patch. Now my question is going to be that which ones do I want? Maybe I'll try all three. These all sound so wonderful. So if you're doing things like simple syrup and honey and like infused vinegars, for that you're going to use the Provence, is that right? With or would you, maybe no, maybe you would use Royal Velvet for the simple syrup because it's
Yeah,
sweeter.
you're exactly right. You're
Okay.
already on top of all of this. Simple syrups, sugars, cocktails, all the mixology and things like that. I would always
Okay.
gravitate to Royal Velvet. Um,
Okay.
Provence is just wonderful when you need that really stronger, more bold, more lavender forward flavoring. So,
Okay.
in fact, for our Herbs de Provence blend, I actually use them both because
Hmm.
they do, each one contributes a little bit different note to a well balanced Herbs de Provence blend.
Okay. I love that you said the Provence does really well in a meat rub. Never would have considered putting dried lavender in a meat rub. I make a maple meat rub that we love and we use for so many different meats and different cuts, but I've never thought of adding a floral tint to it. I'm very
Uh,
curious if I would like it.
Well, it's just wonderful. And again, I always have in the back of my mind the kind and quality of health benefits that you're getting. So it
Yeah.
has great flavor properties, but it's also a great way to add lavender into your life. And one of the things in the book that we go on about is layering lavender into your life, bringing the
Mm.
scents, bringing the sights, bringing the smells, of course, but also bringing that lavender into your body and into your whole daily routine, whether it be face care, body, bath, but also into the culinary. And I think that one of the other ways it's kind of surprising, and I can't wait for you to try this, is get some lavender and toast it like you would nuts. Just take a skillet, put some lavender in a dry skillet, hopefully a kind of a heavy one like a cast iron or something,
That's
and
all I
then
have.
give that lavender a stir while it gently toasts, and you bring a whole new flavor
Wow.
profile. It's just fabulous, and it's great,
Wow.
like,
Does it smell
when I make
like it doesn't
focaccia,
really
I will
smell like an edible smell though, right? It's so floral.
actually, as it toasts, it brings a whole different dimension of lavender, and I
Wow.
would say it almost has sort of a almost like a seed, nut, floral
Wow.
combination, and it's great,
Wow.
like, on top of focaccia or, breads and things like that, but also, and there's a recipe in the book for um it's a lavender salmon. I'm trying to think of the name of the recipe, but it's in the book, and I toast lavender and I use Provence because I want that bolder flavor, and I
Okay.
toast it with some hazelnuts at the same time, and then mix it with some great olive oil and some basil, and pack it on top of some salmon and bake it all together. And oh my gosh, is it
Wow.
fabulous!
Huh. Well, that's how I missed it as I was skimming through the book because I'm not a salmon fan. Sorry for all of those of you who are. So that's probably why I missed it. But now I'm going to go back and really think about if I can incorporate it with some of my favorite pork recipes, even. Hmm.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm not a salmon fan either. So
Oh,
I make the salmon for my family, my boys, but I do it with tofu. So
okay.
taking that same recipe and then I do it with tofu and I love it.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. So I think I understand the difference between the three. Um, so let me backtrack again, just because I'm trying to learn this as I'm saying it. Because I want to talk to you about making lavender salts and sugars and simple syrups and then infusing the honeys and the oils. So for the salt and the sugar, you're going to want, well, maybe two different things. Would you use Provence in the salt and royal velvet in the sugar?
So that is a matter of personal choice. Here at the farm, we sell salt grinders, and I use pink Himalayan coarse salt, and I
Mhm.
use royal velvet in that. And one of the reasons is because that beautiful, gorgeous purple blue color against the
Okay.
pink of the Himalayan salt is just
Okay.
it's just too pretty to pass up.
Okay.
Provence is a little bit more it dries kind of a gray, real pale gray lavender
Okay.
color. And so I
Okay.
really like when I'm looking for visuals, again I go back to Royal Velvet. And again remember there's about 43 to 46 depending on who you listen to varieties of commercially grown lavender. And
Okay.
so there are so many varieties of culinary lavender that we don't grow. And I'm sure those people out there who grow Munstead or Edelweiss or any of the other
Yeah.
Buena Vista, they're just amazing lavenders. We just happen to particularly love Royal Velvet.
Okay. Makes sense. Good to know. Okay, so walk us through making the salts and the sugars. I assume it's done the same way. You talk about in the book, but I didn't read it. So you're teaching somebody who doesn't know. Though I assume it's the same way I make my lavender salts and sugars, but you tell me, how do you do it?
Well, here at the farm, they are very different processes, but for your listeners, they could be the same and interchangeable. So,
Okay.
when we make lavender sugar, and I'll give you the recipe. So, we
Okay.
use a tablespoon of royal velvet lavender, and any other confectionery lavender would work just as well, per cup of regular granulated sugar. And I
Okay.
have tried every other variety of sugar, coconut sugars, raw sugars. The thing of it is lavender has such a bright floral note, particularly royal velvet, I think, or those kinds of confectionery lavenders, that I find at the end of the day, just plain old white sugar works the best. And Vitamix sponsors us also. And so we have a bunch of Vitamixes, and we take the lavender the culinary lavender, and a cup of sugar, and we run them through a high-powered Vitamix, and that's how we make probably 100 pounds of that sugar a week. And
Okay.
it looks a little powdery by the time we're finished, but what it does is it really infuses the lavender entirely throughout all every tablespoon of that sugar then is infused with lavender. And I've seen a lot of other places make lavender sugar, which you can do at home also. Of take a canning jar, a jar with a lid, put some sugar in it, put some lavender in it, and shake it up for 2 or 3 weeks. And the oils in the lavender do tend to infuse in the sugar. The only thing is, I don't ever like um, to hit a bite of a bud of lavender in something sweet because the especially the hull around the lavender flower tends to have some of those camphorous notes. So I do like it emulsified into the sugar. Now,
Okay.
the salts, on the other hand, we again like to keep put them in grinders because you're grinding that fresh product right into your foods, and I think that makes a nicer and maybe a little bit more complex flavor of the lavender. So you can easily buy spice grinders on Amazon or anywhere, or repurpose one that you've purchased from the store and just put in some of that coarse salt and layer it in with some lavender buds, dried lavender, and just grind away into your foods. It's just wonderful.
Okay. So you use dried when you're making it. You first dry the
Absolutely.
flowers. Okay.
Absolutely. For anything that you want to be shelf stable, you want to
Right.
use thoroughly dried lavender buds. And of course, we have the advantage here at the farm now of over 6,500 plants. So when everything's in bloom, I use everything from the flowers fresh. I mean, they're beautiful in drinks, they're beautiful infused, they're beautiful in um, making teas, but also the little leaves of the lavender, the little green leaves are
Mhm.
fabulous. And they're
Mhm.
almost like a more floral rendition of rosemary. Very, very, very good to take the
Mm.
leaves, even dried also, and chop those up and use them in foods and teas and in any
Yep.
kind of
I was
use
just
that
gonna
you
say
would
I
want.
use them in teas, yeah. Okay, so how about simple syrup? Can you walk us through how you make simple syrup with lavender?
Absolutely. So I think the best blend, and I've done this a lot, you just want to be careful with lavender that you don't go to the point when you're making culinary products that you don't put so much lavender in it that you wind up with something that tastes a little like soap.
Mhm.
So about a teaspoon of dried lavender per cup of water. Bring your water up to a nice boil, add the lavender, and then turn it off and let it steep for 12 to 15 minutes. And then take that and then add sugar, depending on the thickness of the simple syrup. We like to do 1 to 1. So once I infuse that water with the lavender, the next thing I'm going to do is add equal amounts of my infused water with sugar, and then make sure it's warm enough that the sugar completely melts into the syrup. Some
Right.
people like to go, say, a half a cup of sugar to a cup of the infused water, but usually we're making cocktails or something where we want a pretty sweet um, and lavender forward simple syrup, and it's great for lemonade. It's a perfect blend for making lavender lemonade.
Sounds delicious. And you leave the lavender in it. You don't strain it out before you add the sugar?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for pointing that out.
Okay.
No, I strain it out. Always
Okay.
strain whatever botanicals you're using for infusing, strain them out, definitely.
Okay.
Because again, you don't wanna hit that real camphorous
Yeah.
dredges of what's left after you made your infusion.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't like it. Sometimes I have left it in and then you have it floating in your tea if you're using it to sweeten your tea. And I don't really like that. So, and then, okay, so honey, I think you already mentioned, and vinegars and um, some oils, I guess, maybe you probably use all of those. For all of those, do you use oh, I'm already forgetting the very first one we talked about. What's the name of your one that you use for those?
What's the name of what?
The one that you use for, oh, no, never mind. It wouldn't be. What's the first one
Barso
that we
Yeah,
talked about that's for your body products?
and
I'm
that's
sorry, the
Grosso
first one.
lavender that we use for
It's
the
what?
body products is more the Grosso
Okay, so that's
lavender.
the one I was thinking of, but never mind because my brain is mixing them up. For the honey and the vinegar and the oils, are you going to use the royal velvet?
You know, especially for vinegars, I really like um, Provence, but again, as a matter of personal taste,
Mhm.
vinegar is a very strong flavor, and so
That makes
bringing in a
sense.
strong lavender is,
Yeah.
I think, a really good thing. And a mix. We have Cordon Bleu chef who works with us as one of our farm partners, and she makes all of our lavender chocolate chip cookies and our pound cakes and a lot of products for us. She's just really great, but
Oh,
she's
that's
also
awesome.
makes kombucha. She is very,
Oh.
very much, yeah, she is like an expert at fermenting. And so for kombucha, she really likes to use a blend of both lavenders, both the Royal
Hmm.
Velvet and the Provence together, because she likes the strength of the Provence to bring in kind of almost like a rosemary, a little bit of a rosemary note
Yeah.
because of the
Yeah.
strength, but you can't beat the both the color and the sweet notes that the
Yeah.
Royal Velvet brings into it. And she
Oh,
likes
that
to do
sounds
it with
delicious.
blueberry too. So she
That sounds
mixes
delicious.
two different types of lavender and blueberries. And oh my God,
Wow.
is her kombucha amazing!
Ah, wouldn't it be great to have a glass of the blueberry lavender beside my blueberry lilac and try them both? Ah, I would love that.
I
Okay.
think we should do it.
I think we should. So, your honey, vinegar, and oils, when you infuse them, is it the same idea? Maybe honey's different with how you do it?
You know, again, with the honey, we use Provence, and we tend to we've done a lot of different ways over the years. And we started with just taking the pure bundles of dried Provence lavender and putting it in the honey and letting it infuse and then warming it and then straining it off. And I still think that's the most pure way of doing it. However, it takes a lot of time and you also have to heat the honey back up. Now we sell mostly a cream honey.
Hmm.
And we find that with the cream honey, because we're also mixing, you stirring the cream honey because um, the process to create cream honey, brings in some of the, um, how honey, when it sits for a while, it gets kind of that crystallization.
Yep. Mhm.
Well, with cream honey, we want that crystallization that we blend into the liquid honey to create
Yes.
a very stable honey product that doesn't separate and doesn't crystallize. And
Yes.
since we're blending already, we go ahead and we take the Provence lavender, just the buds, no stems or anything, and run it through a Vitamix. And then we use that to blend into the honey to pick
Okay.
up the lavender flavor in a very homogeneous way.
Sounds wonderful. So, then the vinegars and the oils, I assume, are much easier then. Those you're literally probably just putting your floral items into your liquid.
Exactly, exactly, and just putting, the amount of buds that you want to deliver the amount of flavor. The sad thing about vinegar is I'll take a beautiful vinegar and put royal velvet, fill the container with royal velvet lavender, these beautiful bottles, tall, gorgeous bottles of, vinegar, and within about a week, the vinegar
Yeah.
has leached all the color out of the
Yeah.
lavender, so they
So you
look
have to get
pretty
all your
sad.
pictures that first day, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so how long do you let it sit for the vinegar and the oils?
So the oils take a little bit longer, and I'd say that you need at least probably 2 to 3 weeks with the oil.
Okay.
And, I really like it, and I like having some lavender, oil on hand all the time. For certain cooking things. I think there's nothing better than using infused oil when you're going to use that oil for cooking. For things like dressing salads, infusing the oil ahead of time, I don't think gives you as great of a flavor as
Mm,
taking a great quality olive oil and then bringing the ground lavender into it fresh as
that's
you
a
make that
great
salad.
point.
Yeah.
I love it.
And vinegar infuses a lot more quickly, and you can have a very, very serviceable quality lavender infused vinegar within a week.
Okay, that's awesome. I love it. Well, I think I'm going to go look up all of these lavenders and start planning where I'm going to plant them because you have me in love with all of this. And this we didn't even get into the food. I mean, folks need to pick up a copy of The Lavender Companion by Terry Veshy. Um, because the recipes in here are they look amazing. I mean, the cookies and the cakes, there's a chocolate lavender cake. So we didn't even get into any of that. And I still really, I need to add some lavender to my life, I'm pretty sure. So tell everybody where they can find you. I believe you're on both Facebook and Instagram. What's your name there?
Correct. So either Facebook or Instagram and/or at Pine Lavender Farm. Very easy
Pine
to
Lavender
find
Farm. And your website again?
is pinelavenderfarm.com.
Perfect. And the book is called The Lavender Companion. It's one that
And
everybody needs in their home. So
and
thank
the
you so
Lavender
much, Terry.
Companion is available on Amazon. It's Borders, Barnes& and Noble, Walmart, Target, and of course, you can come to the farm and pick up a copy too. We would love to see you.
I love it. Thank you so much, Terry. This has been a lot of fun and you've taught us a lot.
Thank you. I just admire your work so much, and I appreciate you having me on. And I can't wait to trade some of our lilac for lavender.
I love it. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. I always love an episode where I genuinely feel like I was sitting down and chatting with a friend. And that's what this episode definitely was. I hope that you enjoyed listening in. Be sure and join us on Friday for that quick 5-minute Q&A when Terry joins me again. And thanks for listening, guys. Make sure you go to soulyrested.com/challenge. You have one more week to be a part of this fun challenge and giveaway about pantry staples that I think you're really going to love. soulyrested.com/challenge. Also, be sure to go over to Apple Podcast and leave a review. If you want to know how to do it, go to soulyrested.com/podcast and you will instantly have a chance to win a copy of the gorgeous book we talked about today, The Lavender Companion, or Stacey Lynn Harris's book, The Love Language of the South, or The Kindness of God by Nate Pickowitz. All these books, I need to give them away. We're going to do that soon. So please go leave a review and you'll instantly be entered to win a copy of one of these great books with these great authors that have been on the show recently. So remember, guys, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it is a very good life.